Hi there, welcome to a focused video. Today, looking at one of the most difficult questions a survivor will ever ask themselves, and that is, why me? Why did they hurt me? Despite being with them, close, all that time, that love, that attention, looking beyond the darkness and the mistakes by them, why did they hurt me physically, verbally? Why did they ultimately abuse me at the end of the day? It's a difficult question a lot of survivors will ask themselves and reflect back because they lack the closure. And it's the lack of closure which can hold people back, and it can also serve as a reason to not move forwards either in the future, or like with a new relationship or new encounters with different people, avoiding certain attachments, avoiding relationships, or trying but then running because it gets too real, it gets too scary, feeling threat, scanning the room, hypervigilance. I have done videos about that type of behavior, as in what a survivor goes through and how the past can dictate how they live their life in the present through the lens of a past, such as bad relationship or maybe a friendship. Today, I'm using the example of an abusive relationship because of the deep connection, commitment, and time spent together, possibly under the same roof and on the intimate level as well. It can run a lot deeper there. But what I do want to say, this video can still serve and apply to other forms of abusive behavior and different circumstances with people. It doesn't just have to be a relationship. It could be other areas in life in which a survivor was on the receiving end of poor treatment, maltreatment, etc. Okay? I just want to say, this video today, from start to finish, is ultimately for providing perspective for the survivor that has gone through a very difficult time or gone through multiple difficult times depending on the situation. This can apply to PTSD and even complex PTSD. Now, I've done individual videos on those areas, causes, effects, and on the survivor. If you are interested in those types of videos and you want a deeper backstory and a deep dive into that, as well as other issues and struggles connected with abuse, the full psychology playlist is available, top right corner of the screen where the eye symbol is up there. If you click on that eye symbol, you get a drop down menu box with the playlist and the odd loose video attached. Okay, so today I'm going to be going at a steady, stable pace, and if at any point it does get too much, you can always pause the video, take a break, get a drink, stretch the body. You do whatever you need to do and what makes you feel most comfortable. You can always come back to rewatching this video at whatever time you can, because this video isn't going anywhere. It will be here for you whenever you need it or whenever you need it most. What I do want to say in addition, as an important disclaimer, what we're looking into today is through the lens, the perspective of the abusive individual, such as an ex-partner, looking into why they were the way they were and what ultimately caused it in the first place. Is there a backstory in understanding? So it might get deep, but it's done in a balanced way for that perspective. But what's most important, and I do stress, what I'm going to be talking about today does not excuse whatsoever. It does not excuse what they have done to a survivor. No matter what they've gone through in life and in the past, it doesn't excuse their behavior in the present onwards. It's one of those situations where a person may not be able to control what happens at times previously, but in the moment, in a new environment, with a new person in their life, they can control how they act and treat this new individual. And what can happen is the bad partner ends up using the past and using it, weaponizing it against a new, impressionable, innocent person who's done nothing wrong, and yet the abusive partner is taking it out on the survivor. And if there's no explanation of the past or the backstory, to a survivor, it's going to come off as very abrupt and unexpected, and the timing of it too. So that's why we're going to go through it bit by bit for that ultimate understanding. And the reason why this video is important, because it's not just about understanding signs of abuse. It's not just about understanding the past of that bad person, that bad ex-partner, and why they turned out the way they did. This video is to finally provide a form of perspective and provide a form of clarity and closure, because a survivor may have never got the chance to get that closure beforehand. If in more complex situations, I'm trying to cover everything, if in alternative circumstances closure couldn't be received because the other person was no longer present, as in on this earth, that can have its own challenges and depth. And when I'm talking about that aspect, not natural cause, but self-inflicted with blame. This video is also going to look at the abuse beyond the grave and why it happened to counter the survivor's guilt. It's all about coming together today, full circle, to truly get that closure a survivor has longed for, and to finally get that peace of mind to be able to attempt to move forwards in life without as many setbacks and without that, that deep feeling or that dread within because of the past pulling them, to be able to move forwards with less consequences and make the most. In some cases, in a current relationship or maybe kind of a previous one on pause, to embrace it finally. Because to a survivor, there are wants, needs, and desires, but they can be at the bottom of the list because it's what's above the heaviness which outweighs and outshadows everything. And that weight can consist not just of the long-term hurt and damage, but the lack of closure. Lacking closure can have its own profound effect on the survivor, feeling tense, feeling hyper-aroused, vigilant, always scanning and questioning and ruminating on the past. It's like a vicious cycle, ruminating on the past, repeating it in the head with words, with visions, and even nightmares, in a desperate attempt to claw and scratch and find answers to explain why a partner or why a friend or maybe why a family member did what they did, despite trust originally being there, despite love and looking up to that someone, that connection made, that positivity at first, for it to all come down to such bad behavior and poor treatment, which the survivor was on the receiving end of. That closure lacking is a heavy weight in which a survivor may circle until they get answers. And sometimes it might be, or it may feel impossible. That's why this video is here, to shine light on areas which most people would never talk about or consider explaining. And the reason why some wouldn't, because they just don't have the depth, and others wouldn't try explaining because of the complexity of the nature and the fear of it impacting the survivor if done incorrectly. These are the disclaimers. Today, it will be done in a controlled but steady flow. And just to reiterate once again, everything that's been talked about today does not justify the abuse, does not justify how they were with you, for example. Okay? So, first of all, signs of maltreatment. I'm going to use that word just because of YouTube and guidelines, okay? Signs of poor maltreatment in a friendship, a relationship, some kind of connection with an individual, where at first there is trust, there may be a form of love, positivity, happiness. It all seems fine, but is it real? One of the beginning signs of controlling behavior, which no one or most people are not going to pick up on, is love bombing, also known as grooming. And that is where the bad partner, for example, will present themselves in a desirable, charming way, in the aspect of being able to lure another person close to them, to do it as a form of attractive behavior, like a magnet, whether it be the way they dress, the way they look, the way they speak, their conversations, what they talk about, their promises, over-promising and at the beginning over-delivering, showering the partner with gifts and presents and surprises and days out, or maybe holidays, depending on how extravagant and what resources they have. The bad partner will make it seem like a dreamland, to act in such a perfect way, to be that perfect ideal partner, which the survivor is going to find attractive and maybe much more. Now, understandably, it can be different for every situation, but it's one of the core methods as to what an abuser will do. Groom someone, convince them, deceive them, appear as a perfect, safe, kind, lovable individual who promises a lot in life, which obviously excites the survivor at the time, being promised a lot and looking forward to it, the future together. And in some cases, if the survivor has good qualities about themselves, the bad partner, the ex, may mirror that. Even if they're not really like that, they will mirror it to make it seem like that they are the perfect couple with the perfect chemistry, working alongside one another and thinking alike, feeling alike, and expressing love and attraction at the same time. But the thing is, the survivor is doing it for a genuine reason, and it's their genuine personality showing. But to the bad partner, they're on a mission. They're doing it to get what they want. And what do they want? They want to be with someone and close, but they feel the need to groom and love bomb in order to win someone over, because they feel that their own natural ability and their own genetic and phenotype makeup, how they present themselves, isn't enough. They have to overdo it in unnatural ways to get what they want. And in addition, because their dark ways, their true self may be off-putting. Now, you could argue and say for a bad partner to mask and shower the other person in extravagant ways is a sign that the abuser, their outlook on the survivor is quite shallow assuming that the survivor needs to be praised with endless gifts and over-the-top gestures and over-the-top love. But the survivor themselves may value and appreciate the small things in life and simply value the other person for just being themselves. It creates a weird, complex and dynamic because understandably, in the present day, right now and onwards, the paradox is a survivor that's gone through all that in the past, dealing with trauma, PTSD, likely if they were to be in the presence of a new partner, a healthier relationship, if they felt held back by the past or unable to reciprocate love, they may mask it, pretend to be okay and pretend to get close. Even though that's what they really want, it's not what they're capable of in the moment, but they don't want to lose someone, they don't want to waste an opportunity. The same way as trying to get better to heal themselves, even if they're not quite ready, but they're doing it because they feel they have to. Masking it, pretending to be okay or pretending to heal, pretending that the healing therapy works, but deep down, it just isn't quite ready or practical. The same way a survivor may mask themselves in appearing fine and okay when they're really not. But their true raw self should be present. It's a paradox to back in the past when it wasn't the survivor masking originally, they were being themselves. It was the bad partner or the bad friend, you get what I'm saying, that they put on a display. They put on a performance to try and win the survivor over. And they did what they did because their true self, they seemed it wasn't enough, or it was off-putting, or they worried about their dark side. If it showed too quickly, it would scare the other person off, so they wouldn't get what they wanted or needed out of it. In addition, the process of why they would love bomb and groom is because it's promising, it's positive at first, and it's constrictive. It's in the process of slowly warming the person's heart, building that stability, that security, making a lot of promises, making the survivor feel good about themselves and feel they're in the right hands and in the perfect relationship with the perfect partner. Wrapping them around the finger so that by the time the bad partner shows their true colours or hurts the survivor, well, the one on the receiving end, they're less likely to walk away. They're more likely to accept it or to look past it. You can get an emotional biasness within relationships, friendships, and deep connections with one another, where one person's mistakes or limitations in life, the other partner supports and reminds them about the positive qualities, acts as that supportive pillar, that anchor in life. And when the other half messes up or makes a mistake or partially hurts or there's a misunderstanding with the one on the receiving end, that there is an emotional biasness in that love is so powerful that they look beyond the mistakes. They look past the darkness and still hope and see the positive within the other half. It's the same way with an abusive relationship. Bad partner acts good, acts nice, charming. Survivor is warmed and welcomed to that. A bond is created on false promises and positivity and false comfort, a false sense of security. But the survivor isn't to know at the time, and really no one would know at the time, because if a manipulative bad person is very good at masking and pretending, you're not to know. The same way, paradoxically speaking, if a survivor in the present time, if they're so good at hiding their PTSD and struggles from other people, you're not to know. Other people aren't to know what's really going on in the mind of the survivor, how they're really thinking and feeling and what's really going on. If you don't know, you don't know. And it would have been the same exact way back then. A slow, constrictive process in which by the time that emotional biasness and love that has been built for the survivor, genuine love for the bad partner, the ex, them doing it so then they can open up their dark side and be more themselves, as in more of their darkness, and take it out on that survivor because of the past, without the worry and fear of abandonment or walking away, because that bond has been formed. So that's what can come about as the methods of how it starts and why it did. You would have heard me mention because of the past. And what is it about the past that the abusive one has gone through to turn out the way they did? Because the past is the past, right? This individual should be treating the survivor a lot better and for the right reasons, and not taking out on them when his current new partner has done nothing wrong and has no link to the past. It's a new time, it's a new place, it's a fresh start. But look, paradoxically speaking, look how it is for a trauma survivor. A survivor was once okay, went through a traumatic event or prolonged trauma, came out the other end feeling hurt, broken, and maybe more. They carry that weight and hurt, pain with them into the future and maybe into a new relationship. They don't mean to do it, in that case, paradoxically, to the other situation, but still something from the past carries over and it gets in the way of a new relationship with a new person. Now, in that case, the survivor doesn't mean to do it, they can't help it, and that's understandable. The contrast is with an abusive individual. They carry the past with them and possible resentment. They take it out on the wrong person, and they do it with intent because it's all they know, or they feel revenge. They take it out on the wrong person, but they follow through with it. So you can see the paradox, but also the contrast. It is still done with intent, hence why it doesn't excuse their bad behaviour and poor treatment to the survivor at the time. So in regard to other methods and signs, we'll just run through it briefly, okay? The reason why all this is important is because these traits and characteristics are what can link back to the past and the causes, the backstory behind why they do those actions or why they are the way they are in general. So just hold with me. Other forms and signs of poor treatment and bad onwards would be cold behaviour. That can be emotional coldness, physical coldness, avoiding intimacy, avoiding hugs, holding hands. When the survivor may feel low or struggling, normally it would be for the role of the other partner to be there, to be the anchor, to be the supportive one. But in the perspective of a bad partner, they're not going to show up. They might be present, but distant. Physically there, but mentally elsewhere. The coldness creating a form of isolation to the survivor and a feeling built within of unworthiness, which can manifest long term. Distant behaviour can just be in the same room but apart from one another on a sofa, sleeping in separate beds, where the bad partner does it as a form of punishment to the survivor for whatever reason, and the survivor can feel unloved and feel unworthy and feel like there is something wrong with them when the bad partner doesn't want to be intimate with them, whether that be through deep conversation or more physical intimacy. It can, without going into too much depth, at some points it can lead to that manifestation within that the survivor convinces themselves that they must be disgusting and that they don't want to be touched and they don't want anything to do with them because of that cold treatment and distance. But the abusive one is doing it as a form of control and self-satisfaction whilst the survivor is on the receiving end, suffering. That's the depth there. There's reason behind it. We'll get to it later. Controlling behavior can be a core element within a bad relationship. It could be financial control, social control, forcing survivor to cut ties with other people, a form of isolation. The bad partner forcing the survivor to spend a lot of time together in arguably a suffocating way without the consideration of other networks and support systems. There can be financial control and physical control, forceful behavior in which the bad partner does or acts in certain ways to get what they want, even if the survivor doesn't want to, isn't ready, and even if there hasn't been any consent given. So that level of controlliveness, as in physical and psychological. Forceful. Dismissal, more on the mental side, where if a survivor was struggling or wanted to share some daily thoughts or frustrations, talking about the world, speaking their mind right, all that, a day out from work or an interaction somewhere, wanting to blow off steam, and yet the bad partner doesn't want to hear anything about it. Blanks, ends the conversation, leaves the room, making the survivor feel more isolated and forced to keep their thoughts and feelings to themselves, which can bubble under over time and manifest long-term post-relationship. So there is that. Manipulative behavior, forms of coercive control, gaslighting, making the survivor think that they're crazy or making them think that they're the problem in the relationship, constantly belittling and doubting the survivor to make them feel small and insignificant about themselves, belittling, dismissal, putting them down, questioning them so they question their own ability to feel that they're not worthy or good enough, really breaking the survivor down as the abuser is trying to take everything from the survivor, everything good, all that life and positivity and those positive traits within the survivor. The bad partner, the ex, is doing everything and anything to try and strip them of it all so they are more in line and almost like a follower to the bad partner, as in yes to everything and following every order and command to, in more extreme cases. One of those situations and relationships where the survivor at that time ends up losing a part of themselves because of changing for the sake of the other partner, and not changing because they want to, but because they have to, because they're forced to, for the sake of survivability, for the sake of people pleasing, to avoid conflict escalating. Other forms and signs would be stalking, physically, verbally, as in interrogations, questioning everything that the survivor does and where they go. If they're 10 minutes too late, if they're 5 minutes early, being criticised and questioned, being stalked with trackers and tags. Survivor may just be spending some time in the park, going out on a jog, on a walk, hanging out with a friend, could be anything. But the bad partner shows a sign of insecurity and a lack of trust. So they go out of their way to track the survivor down in real life and meet up and say, "Oh, what are you doing? What are you up to? Oh, I thought you said you were doing this. Did you lie? Why are you lying?" It can be stalking within the house as well, as in a lack of privacy when the other person's doing whatever they're doing or they need private time. Stalking as in through materialistic and possessions, in looking through, breaking boundaries and questioning and doubting the other half, feeling that there is an agenda going on or that the survivor is sneaking behind the back of the bad partner. And yet the survivor is just doing their own thing and there's been a misunderstanding or maybe miscommunication, But in the lens of a bad partner, an abusive person, they go one step too far. And by being insecure, by interrogating, by disrespecting the wishes and the boundaries of that survivor, like with the manipulative behavior, and it chips away at the survivor, it makes the survivor feel unsafe, undervalued, and totally disrespected. That they can't have their own time, they can't have alone time, they can't just breathe in peace without the other breathing down their neck and questioning them. That in some cases there is emotional stalking, in the sense that the survivor may be kind, nice, or welcoming just in general in life or to some extent, and the bad partner may see that as a hidden message and look deeper into it and question a lot, which hurts the survivor. It is like an agenda, an accusation for the survivor's positive or welcoming warmth towards other people. It might just be who they are or how they've been brought up the right way, but to the bad partner, it's seen as a threat on their own relationship, showing a lack of trust, and that comes across as disrespectful to the survivor. But once again, it's a paradox to the present onwards, because in alternative ways, a survivor, having gone through what they've gone through in the present onwards, when in a new relationship, a more healthy one, the survivor may scan for threats and look deep into meanings and messages, when a new partner may be calm, relaxed, and cool, and understanding, and clear in communication. Because the survivor never got that back then, they got the opposite. It's uncharted territory, it's alien-like, so they've got to adapt. It takes time to adjust and process it. When something positive happens, when it normally never does, it's like, whoa, this is a bit of a shock to the system. It's a shock to the mind as well. It takes time to adapt, to get used to it. At first, it may be seen as a trap or too good to be true. The survivor is digging deeper, searching for an agenda, searching for deeper answers and meanings when there's no need to. But it's not done in a personal way or a lack of respect to the new partner. It's done as a form of self-protection. But the paradox is, with a past relationship, the bad partner is scanning for threats and questioning and checking if there is an agenda with the survivor, but that's done with the intent of, no respect, done with the intent of breaking the boundaries, because that's the difference. The past is more of an established relationship when getting closer. The present is a new relationship or a long-term arm's length relationship where it's still in the early stages, so the hypervigilance will be there. To a survivor, they're trying to protect themselves. But if we're talking about a past relationship which has gone past a certain point where they should be both close together, especially if the survivor isn't really the survivor at the time before the abuse, they should get together. Things should move forwards. The bad partner should know better to not question the survivor, to not break boundaries, to respect the wishes, especially if it's a proper relationship and there was clear communication too. So even with clear communication and even with loyalty, support, and care from the survivor, a survivor can do everything possible to be the best partner possible and to be that special one to the abuser, for different reasons, of course, as we've described. But the abusive one should take the responsibility and accountability to be able to do their part too and reciprocate without the past dictating how they treat the present, because it's two different situations. Yet it's the damage which remains a constant. So, other aspects of behaviour besides the stalking, the emotional blackmail, in which, tying on with the past of a bad partner on their upbringing, childhood, previous relationships, things may have happened to them which altered the way they think, behave, and act onwards. In a sense, not always, because it depends on when it happened. A survivor may have met a partner at the wrong time. Could things have been different earlier? Maybe, but it's not a guarantee. It's only the same way as looking through the lens of a new relationship, a survivor and a new partner. It can be that feeling of, would it have been different if I have met them years ago, before it all? But that's the thing. Is it before trauma, or is it before a singular traumatic event? Because if there was anything much earlier on in life, you'd have to really date back to the beginning of a traumatic event, whether it be clusters, one event, multiple, complex PTSD relating to childhood trauma. That you can have the hindsight of, if I was there earlier for them, it would have been different. But would it have been really if it did start from childhood? Maybe it wouldn't be possible for you to be there or to be in a relationship because of such a young age. It just wouldn't be appropriate. It probably wouldn't work. So some things can't be avoided and some things don't change as in the outcome. That's for the balance, because it's nothing worse than a person ruminating on what could have been different and what could have changed if I had been quicker, if I had showed up sooner. You can't control who you meet in life, and you can't control what they go through in life, as in the past, just like at times what you can't control yourself, as in what you're on the receiving end of. You might be able to control how you react to it, but I guess in the eyes of the bad partner, how they've reacted was poor. They should have done better. They should have been a better person. But to refer back to the emotional blackmail, what that is where the bad partner is fully aware of their past, their history, whether it be childhood, teenage years, when they became an adult, previous relationships, on the receiving end of bad treatment themselves, maybe. But they use their past and weaponize it to make the survivor, the new partner, feel bad. It's used as a form of manipulation and control. There is one thing opening up, being vulnerable, talking about your past and your hurt, and then it's a whole new level where an individual will talk about their past and their hurt and pain, but use it as a means of getting the other partner, the survivor, to feel deep empathy and understanding, but for it to be used more than once and used at times as a form of being treated more leniently. As an example, the bad partner may spill a drink, or may forget something, or may slap the other partner. Pain, hurt, loyalty broken, respect broken, crossing the line, verbal, physical, and so on. And whilst the survivor has every right to cry or to scream or to feel hurt and sad, very normal, what the bad partner does, despite them causing the pain, they turn it around and make it all about themselves. They'll twist it and say, oh, you forced me, you brought it upon yourself, you made me do it. And then they'll follow it up, trying to justify it, the most controlling part, by bringing up their past. Oh, well, I was on the receiving end of bad treatment in the past. Oh, do you remember that time when I told you about that moment where something happened in my life and it really broke me? And then the survivor has to calm down because they've got no choice, or it feels that way. The emotions, the genuine emotions and genuine love takes over, and then the survivor looks past their own struggles and suffering and shows support and love to the very person that caused them that pain in the first place. The bad partner is using their past as a weapon in the present. They're using their past to justify anything that they do in the present. The bad partner is using their past possible trauma to use it as a shield when or if they mess up, despite the survivor having every right to give a piece of their mind to the bad partner. By bringing up that emotional blackmail, it silences the survivor and makes the survivor feel like the bad one, makes them feel like they're the problem. That's the manipulation. That's the emotional reversal. Bad person causes pain to the innocent, yet the innocent is the one made to blame. The innocent one is the one made to feel responsible for the other person's past. That's how twisted it can get. It's a form of control. It's a form of using a free pass. I can do anything I like to this partner because if they counter, if they stand up, I can just excuse it and say, well, it's because of my past. It's because of what I've gone through in the past, used to justify and excuse the current abuse, or used as a deflective tool so they could be treated more leniently. So the survivor is more likely to let off the bad partner through the bad treatment, done with intent. The intent of being able to do whatever they like without the consequences. And when there's a sign or a risk of consequences, the bad partner, the abusive one, can bring up the past and be treated leniently. Because the survivor has good bones and a big heart, but they do look beyond what's happening in the moment and see the bigger picture. But they shouldn't have to settle for that. They shouldn't have to put up with that. But understandably, at the time, it's very difficult to look beyond and think elsewhere. So it can be quite deep, that. And some of these methods aren't applied immediately because of that bonding, that love bombing is what's the beginning to build that connection and deeper trust. Other forms of signs of bad behavior can be passive aggressiveness, blame projecting, turning the tables, making the survivor partner feel like they're to blame for the bad action, for the abuse, for the reaction, for the consequences being instilled in the person's mind. Physical, verbal abuse through and through with consequences. Time in with the examples already given and just as a general umbrella term based on examples you probably would think of yourself. And then another key one, trauma bonding, an extension from love bombing, a form of maintaining and transitioning into the abusive stage, testing the waters. Paradoxically, testing the waters, a survivor in a new relationship would tiptoe about scanning for threats, making little milestones and leaps in getting closer, whether they get close enough and all the way, or they only get so far, testing the water to see how the other person reacts and responds. Paradoxically, it's similar, but done in a darker way though, not as innocent, where a bad partner, an abusive individual, would test the waters by hurting or harming physically or verbally, or starting to control subtly the survivor, seeing how they react and respond to it. And if it ever goes too far or it crosses the line and the survivor panics or cries or says they've had enough or they're going to leave or walk away, instantly the crocodile tears come on, the bad partner apologizes beyond begs and pleads, says it's a mistake, it will never happen again. And because of that deep-rooted bond and love already built up, survivor is more likely to believe in those false words and take their word for it as the truth and continue on. And during that process, shortly after, the bad partner may even act extra kind or nice and supportive and give presents and surprises to make up for their bad behavior, making the survivor feel valued, loved and appreciated. And that desire and that effectiveness can increase for the survivor when they may be stripped or given the cold treatment at times where it feels like there is distance, feels like they're unloved, unworthy, where they start questioning themselves. The bad partner comes back round and reminds them of that love, reminds them of that intensity and passion, but it's a false sense of security. But because the person is starving for attention and starving to be treated normal and properly in a healthy relationship, they will take and grab anything, and the positive feelings will be enhanced and maximized, not naturally, but more out of desperation and that need to be wanted and that need and want to feel how they did the moment they laid eyes upon that new partner, unaware of how bad or dark they were at the time. Kind of like that. Breaking someone down, wearing someone down, depleting, depriving someone of core basic necessities and needs in a relationship, starving them of oxygen, and then giving it to them, which is the normal, the basics of one, but they give it as a gift. They take from the survivor and return it back later as a gift, expecting or wanting the survivor to be grateful for it when it should have been the standard to begin with. That's a level of control with time. You have the equivalent to sleep deprivation or food deprivation. Starving someone and then promising to give food to them later if they're on good behaviour. Conditioning, positive, negative reinforcement. I've touched upon those strategies and methods in the past. It's in the playlist in the other videos, okay? So, with that cycle, with that control, with that great length and effort demonstrated by the bad partner, just why? Because understandably, a survivor may pick up on these signs of abuse, or they reflect back with time and notice it themselves. And each relationship, each connection, each friendship can be different from one another. Some can be really deep and others can be a bit more shallow. Some can be long-term, prolonged trauma. Others can be sharper, shorter, but still just as impactful. Either way, for the bad partner to almost map it out like a strategy, all in place, the psychology, the physicality, the timing, the control, and so much more. The masking, pretending to be a good individual when it's far from the truth. Pretending and charming the survivor, charming the survivor, the partner's friends and family of family, to build that rapport on the outside like it's a perfect, stable, happy relationship without knowing, other people, without knowing what's behind closed doors. Going out in public, putting on a smile, forcing the survivor to put on a brave front and to even cover up, to mask the psychological scars or the physical reminders, that type of behavior. How can someone act like that and put and treat a survivor through all of that and keep that behavior up without ever actually breaking down and realizing what they've actually done? How can they be so cold, so cruel, when the survivor is being nothing but kind, supportive, loyal, positive, or at least trying to, and more so trying during the time of forms and signs of abuse? Why, such as in a relationship where there is supposed to be trust, loyalty, respect, support for one another, communication, long-term, meaning, depth, trust, energy, time, sweat, blood, tears put into it over time to build it like a house, all for it to be taken away or destroyed? Why would someone build it all up to then break it down after, leaving the survivor worse off than ever and dealing with trauma? Why should a good person be treated that way? How could anyone do that to someone? Well, that's what we're going to explain today and go into more depth. Touched upon some key words and lines driven by the past. That's one of the reasons as to why an abuser has treated you the way they have. Because of their jealous and insecurities. That's what they've taken, demonstrated and felt, and then taken it out on you. Their impulse, poor impulse control, impulsive nature, acting on it immediately without thinking, without consideration, impetuous behavior, taking it out on you without considering the context, assuming the worst, disrespecting you, disrespecting that trust, them thinking that there is an agenda going on in the background which doesn't do you much good when you're being genuine and real. And yet they, through their jealousy, insecurity, and lack of trust, they're disrespecting you as a person and your behavior, standards, and everything. Other aspects is forms of narcissism, their narcissistic behavior, their entitlement to get what they want, to have what they want, and for the other person to just follow in line. Sometimes narcissism and entitlement can stem from over-exaggerative, more so overcompensating behavior to compensate for something lacking in the past, that they make up for it now, but not in a healthy way. And how they act, they're taking it out on the wrong individual. But there is a bit of a debate, and it's not just the past, it's also the nature. Nature versus nurture. In short, nature is being brought into this world, one's genetics and makeup within, what you're born with, your mind, your heart, your body, and all of that. The moment you're brought into this world, how you're made and what you carry immediately. There's some elements there which can link to an abuser, okay? But it's not as you think, as in anyone or everyone is born as one, but they're born with certain components. If unmanaged or untreated, it can increase the chances of abusive-like behavior when paired with nurture, as in the presence around, upbringing, childhood, living, experiencing good moments, but in this case, bad moments. You might have heard it mentioned and brought up in crime and true crime, like with serial killers and psychopaths. Are they born like that, or do they become it? And there can be contributing factors for their nature, their genetics, their brain. Are they damaged? Is there something wrong with them which couldn't be controlled when brought into this world? But ultimately, it's more so down to the nature, the nurture, as in the environment, who they're around, what they're around. Because if the nature issues can be controlled and managed, onwards, it's down to the person's own personal choice, how they act and treat others. It's their own responsibility and accountability there. But nevertheless, let's just go through it bit by bit. Let's first of all acknowledge the causes of what makes an abusive partner linked back to nature. Back then, when they were brought into this world, you had no clue that they existed. You were living separate lives at different times as well, understandably. But possibly, when they were brought into this world, if it's down to genetics, a defect, a problem, a complication, which impacted their brain, their processing, certain areas within the brain. If there was dysfunctions where maybe there was pressure, there was damage on certain areas of the brain, it can trigger and influence more negative and aggressive behavior. Kind of similar to when a person has had a car accident or a crash or a knock on the head, or even surgery to do on the brain, maybe a brain tumor, and there's been side effects, there's been a complication or just side effects where maybe there's pressure, there is weight, there is dysfunction within an area of the brain, and that added pressure or dysfunction on that area isn't behaving properly, similar to chemicals in the body being imbalanced. The brain activity and performance is imbalanced. There's a dysfunction causing deregulated emotions, unregulated reactions and responses. It can also link to impulsive behavior, taking action without consideration, without weighing up the risk, the rewards, without considering what it may do for the other person down the line. Other aspects of the nature, what makes a person abuser, can be higher aggression levels, or more so for males, higher testosterone. Some people can be brought into this world paired with brain issues or not. If they've got higher aggression levels, they may have a shorter fuse. And if they don't have a way in channeling it properly through boxing, exercise, or distractions, or learning through nurture what's right and what's wrong, what they're carrying is a box of dynamite or a box full of water waiting to spill out and impact other people nearby. If that bad partner, way back at the start, dealing with higher aggression levels or a short fuse because of chemicals within an imbalance, high levels of testosterone, it can lead to those side effects of being easily irritated, irritability, being uncomfortable and not being able to sit still, getting easily frustrated, getting easily triggered, overreacting, overly aggressive, and if paired with dealing with impulsiveness, as in with the dysfunctions within the brain and maybe not being taught what's right from what's wrong, the impulsiveness can trigger or act as a justification for the aggression coming out. And it all links back to the brain issues there. As said, something biological, something genetic doesn't excuse what they do in the future. Because if they're brought up the right way and if the signs are early, then the parents or other supports should do something about it. Get them help. Send them to the hospital. Find medication. Find treatment. Do something to ensure that when that said person grows up, they don't turn out in those ways and then start applying it on innocent people. If there's been a lack of safeguarding, poor parenting, or a form of neglect tying in with their own biological or genetic issues, it can be a pressure cooker and a recipe for disaster. You know what I'm saying? If they never had an outlet to express those dysfunctions within or higher levels of aggression, there was never a healthy way of channeling it or controlling it. If they were never taught how to control it, they're never going to know. And they just assume that's just how it is with them. There's no way around it. There's no change. There's no hope. It is what it is. They've got to live with it. But in living with it, it's what it can do to other people in the social circle or relationship. And if in the future the bad partner doesn't seek or get help because they see that there is no need, or they don't know how, or they don't see it as a problem because it was never highlighted as a problem back then, so it's normal behavior to them. You get what I'm saying? How certain issues, psychological, mental, genetic, if untreated, the person will maintain that way. If they're treated like it's normal and fine, they will internalize that. So in the future, when they do act out aggressively or take it out on someone, or they are impulsive and they don't consider the feelings of the other half, they're not going to know what's right or wrong, but the survivor is going to know, or at least feel the pain. It's not fair on the survivor. It's not really fair in some circumstances on the bad person when brought up. They can't control what they're born with. They can't control their genetics. They're just brought into this world. There should have been treatment. There should have been something to help them so then they can help themselves down the line. But as said, and I want to reiterate, their issues and problems are not your problems, not for you to control and not for you to blame yourself. And most importantly, this is not about feeling sorry for the bad partner or the abusive one. It's not, in that sense, it's not about feeling sorry for their past, because it's the past. Things should have changed with time. And I know it might seem like a contradiction, as in, well, how they were born and how they were brought up, they can't control that. So what about the future onwards? But that's the thing, through education and being in other networks and circles, learning in other ways and becoming a bit more aware of their own body and mind and learning what they like and dislike, there is still a way to possibly make changes or to consider, you know? It's because the reason why it's important to maintain that balance, because if a survivor felt sorry for the other person. It can lead to the dangers of excusing the past, which can lead to welcoming it happening again by the same partner or a new partner in the future. A survivor should never settle for that, should never feel that that's all they're worth or deserving of, as in the abuse and so on. But it is understandable to fall for it when it's down to emotions and feeling for the other person, especially if there's empathy. But it's important to understand that there were areas that they could control themselves still, and how things were in the past, they're taking it out on you when you've done nothing wrong. So they should know not to do that and to be better. But that's the thing. We've only talked about the nature, the biological side. What about more accountability, or more so the responses and how it's done with intent and who's targeted afterwards? That's what's important as well. So like what we talked about earlier, controlling behavior, stalking, physical, verbal consequences, threatening, manipulative, deceiving, love bombing, restrictive, cold, all those different treatments and methods, it actually links back to possibly what they were on the receiving end of too, what they witnessed themselves. You got to look at it this way, and I want to say it quickly now. Yes, there are times where a person, in other words, survivor, in alternative words, a victim, on the receiving end of abuse, on the receiving end of sexual harassment, on the receiving end of bullying, etc., where the victim that's abused at some points can become the abuser, like a chain reaction. It starts from somewhere, but it's not always like that. But in some circumstances, an abuser, they are what they are and they do what they do. But there's a small chance that they were once a victim before. This does not justify the bad treatment whatsoever. And you know why it doesn't justify it? Because not everyone that's abused becomes an abuser themselves. Some actually remain as a survivor, and some actually develop a deep empathy based on what they've gone through on the receiving end of, and how they use that empathy towards other fellow people that may be going through abuse and bad times. So some people have the ability to not become what they were on the receiving end of. If they can do it, arguably other people could too. What I'm trying to say is it's not linear, it's not one way, it's not one-sided. It's not that everyone that is bad and controlling was once a victim. It's not like that. Because some people can be bad because of how they've been brought up. But other people can be brought up in bad ways, and they may learn to do better or to be less like the people that treated them the way they did. So there can be a chain reaction, but it doesn't have to continue on. Other people can make a difference, and other people can be better humans than the previous ones, whether that be previous family or previous friends. You know what I'm saying? Like, just as a very quick example, bullying. There are bullies, there are victims, the victims on the receiving end, and then at some point they may retaliate back and take it out and get revenge, avenge themselves, not on the original bullies, but on a new set of people, innocent, and the chain reaction can continue. And some can retaliate, and others may not, and maintain being a good person, or even try to be a better person to show resilience against the darkness that they were surrounded by at some point in the past. You know, if there's a survivor present or watching right now, and simply just a survivor struggling in life and struggling with a lack of closure, you remind yourself that, yeah, maybe the person that did you harm may have had a bad past, a hard life, but it doesn't justify what they did to you because you didn't ask for it. You didn't do anything wrong. You did everything right. And yet look how they treated you. They should have known better. They should have appreciated you. But maybe they were too long gone, as in psychologically, mentally, they weren't right in the head. But yeah, maybe they were struggling, still doesn't justify what they did. And what you put up with, what you've become now, besides the negatives and those feelings of restrictions, developing more empathy, more understanding, and more patience, making you a better person than the other partner could ever be in life. They, at some point, could have made the same choice that you did, as in not becoming them, but trying to do better. Not in a patronizing way, but trying to fight back against the darkness. Or, in all fairness, with respect, just trying to continue on in life as best as you can. Even that is a massive positive. Whether it's compensating for struggles or if it just being your real self, even if that feels low or isolating or feeling cold, but not taking it out on anyone, not lowering yourself to the standards of the previous partner. You managed with respect to you. They had the choice and the option to possibly do that themselves to an extent. They could have made the difference in life. Understandably, they may have gone through badness in the past, but they could have done things different or tried or considered or communicated better, in different ways. But that didn't happen. So at times there are choices, and those choices are important to remember to avoid excusing one person's bad behavior just because of their past. It would be the opposite of a microcosm. The microcosm being where the bad partner at the time talks about their trauma from the past or bad upbringing to excuse their current behavior, but also doing it so then they can repeat it later, and for the survivor to just look the other way or look beyond the negative and still show that support and loyalty. It's genuine, but the actions by the bad partner, that's not. It's always important to acknowledge that. When a person manipulates, deceives, gaslights, stalks, it's all done with intent, and they're making the actions and decisions themselves in the moment. Whilst the past may have caused damage, the past is the past. The present is a fresh start, or it was at the time, but there was probably less triggers and motivators about, and yet they still took action against you, did what they did, even when you did nothing wrong. So you have to remind yourself that they could have done and been different, yet they chose not to. They changed and became what they were on the receiving end of. Examples just to give that perspective, of course, to explain and just give a bit of backstory as to why and how they treated you the way they did, the signs of abuse. That can be through a lack of love, more prominent in childhood, but it can apply later on in life as well, through negative experiences or the lack of positive experiences. Not everyone turns out the same way, but some people that may be unloved, or there is a lack of love or a lack of attention when being brought up within the household by family, parents, etc. That lack of love can lead to a lack of stability in life, and it can make the bad person end up feeling inadequate and feeling unlovable and feeling that they're broken or there is something wrong with them, that they may perceive the world and see other people being loved, cherished, looked after, supported, young age, and then being supported and having friends, being valued, appreciated onwards in life. To the bad ex-partner, they may have not had those same opportunities or same upbringing. So it creates a fragmented vision of themselves that everyone else can be loved, but I can't. So am I the problem? Is there something wrong with me? Why wasn't I loved the same way as other people? Why was I treated differently? It creates a complex within. And to try and compensate for that complex, They may take it out on people in the future to fight back. It's not quite the same, but in some cases where some males may have a hatred or a violence against women, in some circumstances, whilst it's not justified, some backstories can result to because they were rejected too many times, or they were manipulated or deceived, or they were used. And if it's only ever been negative experiences, whether that be friendships or relationships, if it's all negative, it can wear a person down and make them resent the world or resent a certain group of people or a certain gender. It doesn't justify what they do to, for example, innocent women, but in their distorted mind, they're just thinking, oh, another one. They're going to use me. They're going to screw me over. They're going to waste my time. They're going to ridicule me. They're going to put me down. They're going to do something. So before they do that, I'm going to do something myself. It gets out of hand. It escalates. And what tends to happen, no one should be abused, but the ones that are tend to be the actual truly innocent people in this world. Does that make sense? Who it's taken out on are the ones that have done nothing wrong in life. Similar to bullying in high school, if a person retaliates back because they are done with the negatives, that's all they know, they've had enough, they fight back. School shooting, what typically happens is the very people that do get shot are complete strangers or innocent people. Collateral damage. Taking it out on innocent people and justifying it because of your past, because of past people. But the reality is the past is the past. And the past people don't represent the present. So in a situation with a male with bad encounters with women previously, women back then may have been bad, may have been problematic, but they don't represent the total population of other women out there and future encounters. But in the warped, distorted mind of such as that male, or reverse genders, whichever way, of course, that's all they know. It's like a person that's brought up in war or a battlefield. They're taught at an early age to defend themselves and to fight back. That's all they know in life, to fight, to be aggressive, to stand their ground. They may not know the meaning of peace. They may not know the meaning of relaxation. It creates a tenseness, a hypervigilance. It's what's taught, it's what's learned through the environment, the nurture, childhood, not being loved or lack of love, not being supported the same, creating a distorted vision within, self-negative reflection of themselves, their own worth in the world because of how they've been treated or the lack of positive treatment. It makes them hate themselves, it makes them question themselves, but it also makes them resent the very people that made them feel that way. You know what I'm saying? More prominent at a younger age because of growing up and learning from what's right to what's wrong. The mind is more active there in terms of learning. At an older age, you may question more, you may think more. You don't just take everything as an answer and certainty. You think about it a bit more. You debate, you discuss, you have your own thoughts and opinions. But when you're very young, development as a child can definitely rely on the influence of primary and secondary caregivers, from parents to friends to schools to teachers. If brought up the wrong way, if radicalized, if indoctrinated, if abused, that's all they know. That's what they may either accept as the norm, which they act out themselves in the future. And they may even not show any remorse or care because it's normal to them, because it's what they've been on the receiving end of. It creates a complex situation. They shouldn't be doing it in the future. They should know better, or maybe learn with time, or influences of other people about too, for that guidance maybe, or for warning signs to be picked up on from others to have some intervention or to have a form of perspective at some point, and for it to not be neglected. You see what I'm saying? But Whilst a person may not be able to control how they're treated back then or a bit later on in life, they do have the control in how they react to it. Maybe with the exceptions of childhood because of being young, not being able to walk out, not being able to walk off, not being able to stand up because of, the obvious. But at an older age, having the choice to not settle for it, having the choice to walk away from it, having the choice to be a better person than the other individual, having the choice to consider alternatives, having the choice to think for yourself. If a survivor can think for themselves, and not all survivors turn out as abusers, like the counterpart, then there is hope and there is a chance to turn out good despite the bad treatment. In some cases, the one on the receiving end may justify it and say, why should I be kind and why should I be nice when other people haven't been to me? I should be like them. But if the minority in life are bad people because the majority, or at least a fair few people in this world or scattered about in this world, are good people, if you believe that everyone is bad and everyone needs to pay, well then everyone's going to be on the receiving end of your actions. And yet there will be genuine good people out there, actual good people that would have been perfect for you. Well, not you, but as in the bad partner. Perfect for the bad partner if at a different time in life, before all this darkness. But different timing, they show up, good, pure intent, positive. But the bad partner takes it out on them, driven and motivated by the past. And that's not fair on the survivor who's done nothing, who's triggered nothing, who's just simply wanting to be loved and also wanting, obviously, to give it to the other person. Whether the bad partner X opens up about their past or not, there can still be that form of abusive behaviour. Because realistically, if a person was brought up in life, if they had any aggression levels or a short fuse, if it was given medication or activities and hobbies to stay calm, to regulate, and if they were in a healthy environment, brought up correctly, knowing what's right, what's wrong, knowing what's respect, how to respect one another, how to respect the opposite gender, and so on. And more importantly as well, teenage onwards, high school, college onwards, being in healthy friendship groups or environments, having good moments as well, maybe early signs of relationships to get a taste of it, to build something of them, to build that stability, to build that positivity, to have a better, brighter outlook on life, well then more inevitably they would turn out probably a healthier person, a better individual. But if the cards are stacked against them, or at times things, wrong place, wrong time, bad people, bad encounters, it can wear on the, bad partner. At the time, they may not be able to control it, and it might be hard, and that is unfortunate. But when they do get round to being in a new relationship, when it's a new person, it's a new face, so you should not be biased towards them or be judgmental just because of your past. Your past can be validated. The bad person's past can be validated and understood, but it doesn't justify how they act in the moment, in the present, in the real time. Because if they treat this new partner, this soon-to-be survivor, as like past people, it shows lack of trust, lack of respect, and lack of genuine love. They shouldn't be doing that. They should do better. Okay? I just want to make it very clear when it comes to this talk, as because of the disclaimer, the closure in all this for a survivor is extremely important, but receiving the correct closure is much more important to get the better form of healing in a natural way. Now, besides lack of love for a bad partner, childhood, nurture, brought up in life, lack of attention too. Lack of attention where they were ignored or their opinions weren't considered. If they were brought up in a big family with lots of brothers or sisters, they may have felt at the bottom of the pecking order, felt less significant, less valued, less appreciated. Maybe it wasn't done with intent, but they grew to resent the very people that brought them into this world. The individual built resentment towards them, and it can build from that, because it's not all through bad experiences all throughout life. It can be one bad experience or one bad moment which has a profound effect, changing effect on the bad person, and it's with their own thoughts, with their own feelings from then, how it manifests onwards, and they perceive everyone as bad and nasty. Paradoxically speaking, to how a survivor on the receiving end nowadays will perceive everyone or most as a early threat, red flags. Are they dangerous? To protect oneself. But is an abusive person that's gone through it, or lack of love, lack of attention, are they doing it to protect themselves too? Well, hurting someone else does not justify protecting yourself. It doesn't. What the bad person could have done, which would have been less abusive or non-abusive and more justified, would be just avoidance, avoiding people, avoiding relationships, denying themselves of happiness because of the fear of the past. But how they've reacted is different to a survivor. They've not ran away, they're not protecting themselves. The hurting other people, and it's done with intent too. Done with intent by their own actions because of the general theme of revenge, whether it be childhood, whether it be later on in life, whether it be a male because of how they were in a previous relationship or around friendship groups or the opposite gender. They take the past out on new safe people. They take the past out on older bad people and apply it to new faces who've done nothing wrong. Done with the intent of getting revenge and taking it out on the wrong people. The acts of revenge, which is the abuse, shouldn't be done to begin with really anyone, but it's the intent and the direction it's aimed at. That's what makes it the choice of the bad partner, despite what they've gone through previously. They didn't have to choose revenge. They could have avenged themselves and done better to fight back in a way against previous people, to do better or to find a better person, to be loved the right way, to be supported the right way, instead of breaking the very thing that you do find and do receive just because of revenge, because of a grudge from the past, and taking it out on the wrong people, leading to collateral damage. That's like the area when it comes to controlling X, a bad partner. They've got a past, but their past doesn't justify their current actions. Their current actions are bad, are unnatural, are unjustifiable. They could have done things differently, right? But look, this is the thing. The examples of what we looked at earlier, besides the theme of revenge, it can be the theme on top or beside in regard to anxiousness, insecurity, a deep level of instability and low self-worth. And whilst a survivor can feel some of those symptoms post-traumatic event, where they don't feel good enough for a new partner, they don't feel worthy, they feel broken, they feel that they're the problem, well, that is an internal reflection of themselves post doing nothing wrong and actually being on the receiving end of something bad with an abusive bad partner or friend. Yes, they may have gone through something in the past which may have altered their mind and thoughts, but in regard to their thoughts, like with the other stuff, how it escalates, how they ruminate and then take it out on other people. See, a survivor who may feel low self-worth is more likely to avoid a relationship or hold someone at arm's length. The difference is with a bad partner, with a bad past, the bad partner who may have low self-worth, low self-esteem, insecurity, they don't push people away. They don't hold the partner at arm's length. They reel them in and pull them in tight in a suffocating, restrictive, controlling way to ensure that they never lose them. Whilst a survivor and person who may be dealing with survivor's guilt, innocent, but gone through a lot in the past, in the present may fear losing someone and not want to lose them, the actions to maintain someone isn't done with the same intent or the same directions as a bad previous partner who's keeping hold of the survivor close to them in a forceful way and in a selfish way. There's a bit more depth to it. There's a separation between the actions. Some could argue there is a correlation between an abuser and a survivor in how they act and react onwards post-trauma, but it's the intent that separates a survivor in innocence to a bad controlling partner who's doing it in a malicious way and done with intent in a nasty way. One's innocent, the other one's not. That's what the core difference is and should always be remembered, especially when gaining that form of closure and perspective. There is a difference, right? So a bad partner that may have a lack of love or a lack of attention, they may double down on that and do the opposite. Instead of feeling unloved and feeling unwanted and underappreciated, they may overdo it in an unnatural way at first by doing the opposite towards a new person that they meet in life, by showering them with love bombing, trauma bonding later, but love bombing, grooming at first to get what they've always wanted. Treating in an unnatural way, treating an impressionable new partner, soon to be survivor. What the bad partner is doing is love bombing, building a relationship, appearing attractive, magnetizing personality, charming, kind, sweet, giving compliments, being loving, giving gifts, promising the partner the world, doing everything that bad partner never got or received themselves during childhood onwards. It's like for a brief second, the bad partner is wanting the survivor to feel everything and experience everything that the bad partner never got during childhood onwards. Now you could say, well, isn't that bordering on to how parents have a tough upbringing, life early on, childhood, but then when they have kids, they make sure that their kids are well off and have a better life than what the parents did? No. Because it's brief, what we're talking about. As in, a bad partner may shower, and not always for that reason, but may shower the new partner everything that the bad partner never got as a child. And then when they do give everything to the new partner, it's then taken away afterwards when their old grudges and resentment from the past kicks in. And that charming mask, what they first wore and presented to deceive the survivor, or even maybe try and deceive their own self from their own real darkness, to try and hide from it, to try and pretend to do better, but not dealing with it head on properly, pushing it under the rug, wearing a mask to pretend everything's fine and okay, that they're stable, secure, safe. So the survivor feels welcomed and warm and connected. But a bad controlling person can only keep that up for so long until their old ways return back, or their deep-rooted problems and resentment from the past kick in which they take it out on the wrong individual, an innocent new partner instead. The trauma bonding part is when it's done with intent, that the bad controlling partner wants the survivor to stay around as long as possible, but also with a guarantee that they're not going anywhere and they're not going to leave them. So then they can do whatever they want. They can use them as a, what would you call it? A punching bag, physically and verbally. So they can do whatever they like, get it all out of their system, all their past frustration, all their aggression. And if it was nature, as in higher aggression levels, impulsiveness, brain issues, if untreated, they're taking it all out the past on a new person that's done nothing wrong as a punching bag, and then apologizing afterwards, not because they're sorry, but because they've been caught out. Not because they're sorry, but because they now know that they risk losing that survivor that deserves better, deserves a better partner. And what does the bad partner do? Reel them back in with gifts, apologies. Because how it started, the relationship, was built off a false impression and vision, but that vision was strong and positive and linked and touched the heart of the survivor. And first impressions are everything. What can happen to a survivor post-abuse or trauma onwards through life? They can reflect back on a previous bad partner and think of the positive times to compensate for all the negatives, to maintain a level of sanity. And just because that first impression was so positive and they dreamed and wished that it could have stayed that way, but it was only temporary, it was a cover, but they didn't know that at the time. So by the bad partner doing that trauma bond, her survivor reacts, may say, I'm going to take a step back, I'm leaving, I've had enough. Bad partner makes it up, I'm sorry. In other words, damn, don't leave me, I need you, I want you, you're mine. That type of language. You're not going anywhere, for example, in a monologue. And they fear losing the partner. The bad controlling one doesn't fear losing them as in the love aspect, genuine. They fear losing them because they lose their punching bag. They lose that one person that they can take all their past anger and frustration and pent up resentment on. If they don't have that new partner, that new survivor, they've got no one else to basically abuse. In a dark way, that bad partner is using a new relationship as a channel to right the wrongs of the past, to get revenge on the past people in the present. Like the equivalent of, you've been hurt, you've been cheated on, you get a dartboard out, you stick someone's face on the dartboard and you throw darts at it. Getting revenge in a slightly passive way. But what if that dartboard, which has a picture on, is a photo of someone that isn't from the past, but someone from the present, and they've done nothing wrong? And you just so happen to use it to channel your frustration and taking it out on someone that doesn't deserve it and doesn't need to exceed that. You know what I'm saying? It's like they're taking it out on the wrong person. And there's a way about going about things anyway, but just the basics, they're taking it out on the wrong person. If they have grudge, if they have frustration, if they have anger, if they have resentment, if they want to get revenge, if they want to give a piece of their mind, they should be following that up with the very people that caused them that distress in the first place, not a new impressionable partner that just wants to be loved and, supported and to build a connection. That's what the distorted view is, taking it out on the wrong person. Actions done with intent, but impulsiveness without care, without consideration. And a relationship should be built on care, consideration, trust, loyalty, respect, and boundaries. And clearly, that bad partner has broken those rules within a relationship because they're letting their old ways, they're letting their past dictate how they act and react in the moment. And yeah, maybe they didn't deserve what happened to them during childhood and onwards, but neither does a new partner deserve the consequences from it all when they've done nothing. It goes both ways. That's why it's important. Now, toxic environment can tie in with a lack of love and a lack of attention, but a toxic environment can be small talk, insults, being belittled, being put down, which can build to a self-negative image and resentment building up once again. But that learned behavior too, seen as normal, it can wear them down, but if done from a young age, they may just adapt to it and see that as normal behavior. That's all they know in life, to be insultive, to be abusive verbally, to be nasty, to be cold, to give insults, to swear, to put people down, to make them feel worthless, to make them feel low. That shared mirrored behavior, interactional synchrony performed by caregiver and child can be learned as normal behavior, just like learning the alphabet, learning the times table becomes the norm. That's the answer to it all. Well, in their mind, in their distorted view. So later on in life, what do? They insult, they belittle, they swear, they take it out on other people, but they don't even know that they're doing it themselves. That doesn't excuse everything, but that's just like an alternative. As in some cases, a survivor may be abused verbally because that bad partner was once treated that way too, but at such a young age that that's all they knew and felt that was normal. Now, once again, it doesn't justify it all, because surely secondary school, high school, primary school, college, onwards, in other forms of secondary interactions, there should have been an adult, a safeguarding teacher, or someone somewhere that should and would have reported it or highlighted it. They could have played a role too in a form of intervention being followed up on before it escalates in the future. Because when something becomes the norm, it's hard to break out of. When something becomes the norm and it's deep rooted from the past, if that's all they know, if anyone called them out on it, they wouldn't take that accountability and they wouldn't see anything wrong with it because it's normal to them, but obviously it's not normal to the majority of the population in this world, and so on. So having an abnormal upbringing or abnormal toxic environments, it can lead to a damaged persona and behavior. And paired with any nature issues like brain problems, pressure on the brain, which impacts and deregulates a dysfunction within the brain, deregulated emotions, not being able to cope or react appropriately at times for certain environments, it can all build together. It's not just one component, it's many factors. The nature aspect isn't what ultimately causes an abusive person, but it's the components which can part and combine with the nurture aspect, which can make someone an abusive individual. A person can become abusive by the people that they're around, the people that they look up to, the people that they're on the receiving end of, and the different environments and places that they move in within life. What they adopt as normal behavior, and what they adopt and reject and retaliate to as a means of revenge, as a means of retaliation, but often taken out on the wrong person, which is a problem. Now, physical, verbal tension, abused in general, coldness, where they once again feel distant, feel left out, feel undervalued. They do the opposite in the future, but in a controlling way. Whilst they may have been left out or held at a length of arms, they do the opposite with a new partner. They track their movements, they interrogate, they ask them where are they going, when will they be back, because of that insecure, that anxious attachment, that worry, that deep-rooted fear that they're going to be abandoned all over again like how they were in the past. So they take drastic, extreme measures in ensuring that that new partner never leaves them. But it's done through control, it's done through nasty, coercive behavior, it's done through breaking the partner down, taking and stripping them of what makes them them, and turning them into almost like a zombie. No disrespect to the survivor. Just like an argument in life amongst healthy people, when an individual has to resort to swearing and shouting and insulting is the moment that they've lost control of the argument. If they have to swear or shout to get their point across, it shows that they've lost control in the first place. It shows that they don't show respect, they don't show care, they don't show consideration. If they can't communicate effectively and normally without all the shouting and swearing, then there is a problem. And It just shows that there's a lack of respect. So in a similar but more extreme fashion, if a bad partner, in order to get what they want in a controlling fashion, in order to get communication across or to point things out, whatever that may be, a question, a discrepancy, a consideration, a suggestion, a complaint, a form of intimacy. But if any of that comes about, but it's done in a way where the bad partner has to force it, or has to shout, or has to break the person down first in order to get what they want, it doesn't say much about them as a partner or as the relationship as a whole. A healthy relationship should be built on active communication and not one way, one-sided, a form of reciprocation. And furthermore, a healthy relationship shouldn't have to involve the use of force in order for one person to get what they want. There should be a middle ground of being able to communicate effectively and meet in the middle so both parties are satisfied and happy. In a relationship where there's a bad partner dealing with the past and insecurities and low self-esteem, and they make that prejudgment that that new partner may think less of them or may leave them at some point, blurred lines, taking it out, overcompensating behavior, controlling the new partner to make sure that they never leave them. To a survivor in a new relationship, having dealt with all of that, a survivor isn't likely to do that. A survivor is more likely to hold someone at arm's length at a distance to protect themselves and to not get hurt by the other person. The arm's length can create emotional distress for the new partner. Of course it can, if they care deeply about that survivor. But the survivor isn't doing it on a personal level to cause intent and harm. They're doing it to try and protect themselves and put themselves first because they lost that in the past. So that is understandable. That's where the contrast is. It's always important to contrast, to balance it out, to provide that ultimate perspective, because it's never one-sided and it's never linear. Okay? Now, through coldness, abandonment, and chaos, noise, and disruption in a person's life, do they know what's right from what's wrong? Do they know what's healthy and what isn't? Were they brought up with good values and a good attitude? Or were they brought up with insecurity, instability, abandonment, anxiousness, confused, disorientated, mentally more so, which left them struggling down the line in the future, and they didn't know how to react properly, or they felt like they knew how to react properly, but it wasn't for the positive reasons. And once again, who they took it out on, those that got the receiving end of it, weren't deserving of anything to begin with in that situation. So, being taught what's right from what's wrong, how to respect people, how to respect the other gender, all important core elements when being brought up and onwards. If that isn't instilled, well then they're going to treat people badly onwards, and that's not good. But in fairness, it doesn't always have to be childhood. The childhood could be somewhat okay or fine, but it could be what happens later in life, a knock to the head, an injury, damage to the brain, causing deregulation of thoughts and feelings and emotions, a sudden impulsiveness, a sudden aggression spike because of complications or side effects of an injury or surgery. Without care or medication or therapy, it can go wrong. It might be out of their control, but it can go wrong and people can get harmed in the crossfire of it. Or if it's not through injury, as in the nature side, the nurture as in that person is around the wrong crowd of friends in life, around the wrong crowd of people in bad relationships, and they develop an unhealthy relationship with those people and apply it in the future. Their worth, their respect may be lowered. Their attachment may be extreme. Their actions in their eyes may be done out of a means of being protective and self-care and very loving, but to a survivor, far from the truth, it's the opposite. But that bad person can't tell the difference between what's normal, healthy, and what isn't, in some cases because of what they've already gone through, or how their mind changed with time upon self-reflection and spiraling out of control in some ways. So once again, it's the reaction and it's the consideration and who they take it out on, which shows an intent and darkness which can't be excused or justified despite their past. Always needs to be remembered. In death, an ex-bad partner, under certain circumstances where they have died in some way, if there was ever a note, you know what I'm saying, and it was blaming the other partner, as in the survivor, that's what can link onto survivor's guilt, where the survivor that has been put through hell yet looked beyond and fought for that relationship, did the best that they could to keep it going and looked beyond the darkness and the mistakes and hoped things would change. On top of all of that, on top of everything that they've given, they're now handed a heavy weight of lack of closure and feeling to blame, carrying survivor's guilt. I have done a video on survivor's guilt, as in dealing with it and healing. If you want to see that video, it will be linked in the playlist where the eye symbol is up there. But an alternative way of dealing with survivor's guilt and feeling that closure, true closure, under the specific circumstances of a bad partner somehow died, and there was a note blaming the survivor, the innocent one in it all. Survivor internalizes it and feels a deep sense of loyalty and a deep sense of responsibility and a deep sense of feeling bad and much more. But is there an alternative way of looking at it through the lens of the bad partner and their original intention? Because them removing themselves from the earth may partially link to their struggles in life and psychological issues if they're not mentally right. But there was always that time, if they were able to get into a relationship to begin with, at some point they should or could have considered being able to effectively communicate with the other partner, as in struggles, and not just communicate, but take action too. A partner can be there to support you and be there for you and show up, but they can't directly fix you. You have to do that yourself, or partially to an extent, give and take. Even if there was communication at times, whether that be genuine, deep moments, trauma bond, or if it be manipulation where the bad person brings up their past after hurting the partner in order for the partner to excuse the actions and feel sorry for the bad guy or bad woman, Either way, communication, yeah. Survivor may know of certain struggles, but on the sideline, if they didn't know, they're not going to know. They're not going to be able to do anything to change the ex's death, so they can't blame themselves for that. If the survivor knew of the partner's struggles and felt responsible for not doing enough, that can be countered as well. Because once again, a partner with someone struggling can only do so much, as in support and being present. It requires the one struggling to do something themselves and take some action, or at least try to get better, or at least try to heal for the sake of themselves and on the sideline for the sake of the relationship. If the bad partner fails to take action, may communicate, but they fail to take action, they neglect the wishes of the other half and they continue on and things spiral and they do eventually do something to themselves, that's not the survivor's fault. They can't control everything. They can't force everything as well. And in a way, when you think about it, the bad partner who may struggle, who may spiral, who may be triggered at times by external stuff, who may take it out on the survivor, this is the reality. Whether you got children or you're just simply in a relationship with a partner, there's more at stake now. There's more to consider now in one's own life. A person could be reckless with life for good reason or not. They may not care about their own health, their own safety. If they're an individual, separate lone wolf, then it's not selfish, it's just them. But the moment that they are integrated in a family or have children or have a partner, it's not just them that matters. It's the partner, the survivor, it's the children, etc. So as bad and as struggling as the bad partner, the abusive one, might be going through because of the past or something else, whilst it doesn't justify the abuse in the moment, their past, does it justify what they do to themselves, self-removal from life. Does it justify that? Whilst they might not be in the right state of mind, understandably, there may have still been an earlier time where action could have been taken when the partner was there, supportive, but the bad partner didn't take the action and didn't get better. And by not getting better and staying as you are, it's not only disrespectful, it's not only selfish, but it's also traumatizing and abusive to the survivor that puts up with it on top of additional abuse, is always there showing up, whether that be or willing to show up to appointments or to drive them about when they need it, or just to be there in some ways, to make sacrifices themselves, to give up time, to spend more time, to be that supportive one. Even if the survivor has been, badly hurt by that bad person, there is still that deep empathy and that biased love and that bond. After everything that bad partner has put the survivor through, if that bad partner is spiraling and the survivor is willing to be there to be the rock, if the bad partner neglects getting help or changing their ways before it's too late, that's very abusive and hurtful for the survivor that's willing to go through it all, the hell, the visions, the past, in hopes of a better future with that bad partner and hoping that they can change their ways. If the survivor who's been through hell believes in the bad partner, then the bad partner at the very least could try and get help or make an effort, at least play their part within it. Now, I know some situations can be very complex and deep, but I'm just trying to give ideas and perspective here. So even before possible death, not getting help whilst being in a relationship is a form of abuse itself. And it adds to the stress and anxiety of the survivor that's tiptoeing around, not knowing what the next day will come and how the other person will be. Besides whether there'll be abuse or not the next day, it's, will I wake up and this person will still be around or not? It's like a minefield. It's like walking on eggshells, paradoxically, with how it could be with a survivor and a new relationship where a new partner is walking on eggshells because they don't want to trigger the survivor or make them spiral. Different reason, more genuine that, a contrast. But in the past, with a relationship and how one goes about it, if a survivor is willing to go through hell and back and still believe in that relationship, that bad partner at the least could make an effort or an attempt to change their ways or to try and get some help or try and reach out in some way, because the survivor shouldn't have to be the psychologist or the personal counselor. They should be a partner, a loved one, and not some kind of robotic individual. Shouldn't have to be like that, you know what I'm saying? So when it does come to the death part, and there's no respect and there's no action taken, and they've done what they've done, and they may leave a blame note, that is just the ultimate low, in a sense. Now, in some cases, a controlling bad partner that may have anxious attachment or very insecure has been abandoned in the past, and they felt that they didn't want to be abandoned again, but they felt it was inevitable with the survivor, maybe because of all the abuse the survivor has put up with, and finally they're considering walking away or leaving. What does the bad partner do? Their controlling, manipulative ways don't work anymore. The survivor has finally built a bit of courage or found some strength deep within to possibly part ways or to maintain some distance. That's alarm bells for the bad partner that feels, well, all the controlling ways aren't going to work now to justify the past, so go to the extreme. If I can't have you, I'm going to make sure that you can't have anyone else in the future. That's exactly what that bad partner has done under the conditions of struggling, abusive, and feeling that they're losing you. If they feel that they're losing you, they want to make you suffer for it. You deserve to get away from it. You deserve a break. You deserve a rest. You deserve a healthier relationship, possibly. But that bad partner won't allow that or doesn't want to accept it. And their old ways don't work anymore. So they sacrifice their own life to make sure that your life will be unhappy onwards. If they can't have you, they don't want you to be with anyone else. For all that time when you have dealt with survivor's guilt, worried and concerned what the other partner may think of you, well, they're willing and wanting to make sure that you'll never be happy and you can never love again and never be with anyone again. You got to ask yourself realistically, would a good person want that for you? Would a loving relationship and a loving former ex-partner, would they remove themselves and blame you for it to ensure that you can't be happy in the future? Would a loving relationship lead to survivor's guilt? In that sense, we're not talking about an unexpected death of someone who's non-abusive. That's not the topic today. We're talking about bad relationships, a bad partner with a bad past, how it's influenced and how it's triggered in the present, but then how it goes beyond that and it's done with pure intent to cause harm, to cause pain, to cause distress. A survivor with survivor's guilt, under those circumstances, can be one of the most selfless individuals out there. The opposite of selfish, where they deny themselves of happiness, they deny themselves of a future, they deny themselves of a new relationship because they don't want to disrespect the past partner. They don't want to disappoint or upset. But the reason why a person with survivor's guilt is mainly doing that is because they feel to blame for the person's death. So all they can owe is loyalty long term. It builds an emotional debt, a paradox to how a survivor in a new relationship, with or without survivor's guilt, a survivor with PTSD may not be able to reciprocate to a new partner, put them on a pedestal because they feel that they're unworthy, undeserving, and can't give it back. It creates an emotional debt. All that love, all that compliment, they can't give it back. So it makes them feel bad. It makes them feel unworthy. So they pull away, distance themselves, isolate, or hold at arm's length. If they can't give, they feel they shouldn't receive either. And when they do receive, it builds that debt, it builds that pressure, it builds that guilt and shame within. True survivor's guilt, dealing with guilt and shame, but like with a false sense of security, what that bad partner has actually done has falsely created a false sense of guilt and shame that survivor has believed in all this time. So, for as long as the partner who's got the survivor's guilt, who's been blamed for the death of a bad partner who's done all the abuse, and then at the very end has the cheek to blame the victim, the sufferer, the survivor, after everything. Really? Like I said, in a normal, healthy relationship, if a person unexpectedly passed away and there was a form of survivor's guilt and a lack of closure, a survivor of that may feel undeserving of a new relationship or tied and tethered to a past one because the chapter hasn't closed. They may feel that they'd be disrespecting or being a bad partner if they moved on. They wouldn't, but it's understandable why they would think that. But the perspective there would be to the survivor, directly to them. If you believed in that relationship and you believed in that your former partner was a truly good, genuine person, then surely they would want you to be happy, right? And did they ever say or want you to be happy in life, in conversation in the past, with anything? Because if they ever wanted you to be happy in life, they would certainly want you to be happy right now instead of being held back by the past. However, with a bad relationship, a bad ex-partner who may have removed themselves and blamed you for it, would they want you to be happy? Clearly not, because if they're willing to leave a blame note to ensure that it's made clear that you're to blame, ensured to make you feel bad on a more extreme scale, early warning signs would have been where they hurt you, you felt bad, you cried, you felt hurt, and instead of the apologies or actually changing, they threw back in their past. They made it all about themselves once again. When you were the victim, when you were hurt, when you were harmed, when you were disrespected, what did they do? Did they apologize? Always? Did they always change? Or did they make it all about themselves once again? Oh, it was because of the past. Oh, it's because I was abused. Oh, it was because I was treated badly. Yeah, you may have been treated badly, but does it justify you treating this person badly? Because all that does is creates a never-ending food chain where no one gets better, but everyone gets hurt along the way. Collateral damage. Why not be that difference maker? Why not make that change when in the presence of a much better person who is probably good for you? And when I say you, I mean the bad partner retrospectively, you know? If they're too far gone, they might not be able to think or consider that, but still, they are acting in certain ways and making the choice not to apologize, but making the choice to make it about themselves in order to make the survivor feel bad and to feel to blame. That's a microcosm of self-deletion and leaving a blame note saying the reason why I did what I did to me is because of you, and maybe giving reasons. Was it ultimately down to the survivor's fault? Not a chance. Was it all down to the bad partner, as in a combination of their past, their struggles, never being dealt with, never getting therapy, never getting help? Yes. Was it down to them as a form of their thoughts and darkness manifesting and self-negative reflection, a lack of communication, a lack of willing to meet in the middle grounds, a lack of willing to get help whilst being selfish and disrespecting the other people around and their safety? Yeah, it all falls back on the bad person. It's not victim shaming, it's not people blaming. This is just observations based on common sense, you know? Look at it as an alternative. Not so much self-inflicted, but let's say there was a person that did extreme sports, skydiving or mountain climbing or rock climbing. That's what they do. It's what they've done at a certain age onwards. It's just them. No one else around. No consequences, no one hurt. But if that person, you know, has a family, has children, or finds a partner, gets married, the wishes, the concerns, and the feelings of the other half matter 50-50 in that sense. While she might be known for doing extreme sports and dangerous stuff which could risk your life, you're not just risking your life anymore, you're risking the emotions and the relationship of a new thing that you've built. If you continue on acting recklessly without respecting their wishes, if they did make the case of could you change, could you be more careful, if those wishes are disrespected, what does that mean for the relationship? A lack of care, selfish behavior, adding to stress and anxiety of the other partner, having to deal with it and put up with the what if scenarios if it does go wrong, if they wake up the next day or hear on the news something bad has happened to them. Imagine the damage that would do. Whilst it's not, I can't say the word because of YouTube, or maybe I could, but I don't want to risk it. Whilst it might not be directly self-inflicted with the intent of death, they are tempting fate, possibly. And when other people are involved in life around them, they matter as well, their thoughts and their feelings. They don't want to lose that said person. They want them to be around for a long time. Just like how a survivor, despite the distorted view and the trauma bond, would want that bad partner to stick around for as long as possible, to try and make it work, to make things better. Or, if the survivor was well and truly done with the bad partner, to be able to go separate ways, but just hoping and wishing for the best because they still have at least that deep, natural love and care and concern, hoping that they can change and become a better person, whilst the survivor goes off in their own direction to heal and process and find a different relationship. But no, that bad partner, no, they disrespect the wishes of the survivor, do their own thing, leaving the survivor to pick up all the pieces. Would a loving relationship, would a loving, good, caring person do that to you? No. Would a good, loving person ensure that you can't be happy and can't move on in the future? Would it really be like that? Yeah, exactly. So, it does link back to the actions and the accountability which the bad partner did not take and did not change. and did not act or did not make an effort. Survivor doing what they could with what they were able to. As said, not every situation is as easy as one another. Not every situation is the same exact outcome. But I just wanted to give a framework to provide that closure which a survivor may have never had before. Referring back to the question, why me? Why did they hurt me? Why did they do that to me and go that far? I never asked for it. I never did anything bad myself, so why would they go after me? If there was that final question of why did they target me specifically, there is a chance that there might have been a form of attraction, that what they saw is what they liked. But in terms of their behaviour onwards was not natural. There can be natural attraction to begin with. You may stand out in a room based on how you look, how you appear, or how you sound, how you talk, how you present yourself. It could be in many different ways. There can be a magnetising, attractive pull. But it's what happens next that's most important. So what? Is this a blame game of one's appearance and that's what's caused it all? No, not at all. It comes down to how the other person should have acted accordingly and as a proper adult and in a normal way, which they failed to do so because psychologically they've got problems. Mentally, they may be struggling. They're probably not in the right frame of mind to be getting into a relationship because in that particular case, under those circumstances, they could be capable of hurting someone. The closure within all this is to say that not everyone in this world is mentally unstable or has psychological issues. Understanding the biology and the psychology is what separates the irrational thoughts with the logical thoughts, because understandably, whilst a bad partner may only know of bad encounters and it's manifested in their outlook in life, so has it had on the survivor on the receiving end of that food chain of abuse. But this survivor has come out of it, hurt, damaged, maybe feeling broken, but they've not turned dark themselves. They've been a better person, and even if they don't feel it, they've been a stronger person by just existing and continuing, which should always be acknowledged. But in going through that and the experiences, what did they get from it? Well, with respect, a survivor may have gone through an abusive relationship, or with respect, a survivor may have had an abusive childhood in some way, which could have led to a rebound, a sense of familiarity and darkness, with then indirectly coming across a future relationship which just as abusive or similar. Once or multiple times, it does not matter. It's important and it has an impact on the survivor. And if that's all they know, as in how they should be treated better, but in their mind, no. And the bad actions and the consequences which they just adapt to and see as the norm when it really isn't. That type of pattern, that's what they get used to in the future. They may not take it out on other people, but they take it out on themselves. And in some cases, they may be made to think or forcibly convinced that they're the broken one, that they're the problem in it all, when really they're not. By understanding it through the lens that it's not them who's broken, it's not the survivor who's broken, who's got the issues, it's the person that treated you so badly in the first place that has issues. You know, intelligence or not, or we're talking about actual psychological health, if the survivor presented themselves with kindness, caring nature, understanding, very patient, very supportive, welcoming, and all the good qualities, if a survivor displayed that, well then the bad partner, the controlling one, not only was an idiot for treating the survivor and putting them through such hell, but the bad partner clearly wasn't mentally of sound mind to treat someone like that, because in this world, yes, there are bad people, but there are also good people, and a fair few of them. There's probably likely more good people than bad people. But then there are some very good people and some very rare people. And in some cases, no disrespect, a survivor could be in that situation, a very good person, and that bad partner should have appreciated it, but because of their mind, their behavior, their old ways and everything, they did not respect that. They did not appreciate that. A normal, healthy person would feel very lucky and be very grateful and happy to be in the presence of a survivor with those qualities, and so on. But a bad partner who can't appreciate, who can't feel lucky, who can't see it that way the same, they've clearly got a dysfunction in the brain. There's something going on, and it also influences their behavior, their actions and reactions. That the relationship from the survivor's side was real and true, and the love given was real and true despite the abuse. Always important to remember, because as important as it is to get closure, this is not about feeling sorry or excusing the behavior of the bad partner, but at the same time, this is not about diminishing the actual love shown by the survivor, because that side of the relationship was real. The other side, by the other partner, the bad one, wasn't as real. There was manipulation, there was planning, there was intent, and it was negative with time. Okay? So a survivor should never feel bad or should never put themselves down for what they gave. It might feel like given to the wrong person, and that's very understandable. But in terms of what they gave was more than likely enough and was real, and they should never lose sight of that, because it's okay to reflect back on a previous relationship, even if it's a bad one, and see the positives or try and have the positives, because one, it's a trauma response. Two, it's a method of trying to maintain a level of sanity. But also thirdly, it's a level of trying to retain one's own self, which may have been lost, killed, or broken by the actions of the bad partner. So a survivor has every right to remind themselves and hold on to the fact that they held up to their end of the bargain in that relationship, even if the other partner checked out too soon, you know? So I hope in some way that brings some closure or perspective. The bottom line is, by knowing someone is psychologically ill, or they may have mental struggles and dysfunctions and darkness, that type of behavior does not represent the entire population, because not everyone is that unstable. Not everyone is that deregulated emotionally. Not everyone is that aggressive, are they? It's understandable to still be cautious, to be hypervigilant. That's a defense mechanism to protect oneself. But when noticing how broken a person could be, or how dark a person could be, the more prominent, the more it stands out, the more it contrasts to other people around. If there's ever a time where a survivor gets into a new relationship and describes that new partner as a night and day difference, a light and dark difference, that is the telling sign that the past was abnormal and different. The present is completely different, and what's completely different can likely yield a different result and outcome, and arguably a more healthy one. The clearer and more understandable it is to differentiate between acceptable behavior and unacceptable behavior, from healthy person to unhealthy, bad or broken individual, not ready or not safe to be in a relationship with, the more easier it is to separate from, and the more hopeful it can be to look onwards in a brighter way, without excusing the past, accepting better, and without diminishing the past and the struggles. Because I do understand, just in general, when a person struggles, it's for a reason. So the past can't be diminished, because if it was, it would make the struggles feel worthless. And why should a person struggle for no reason? There should at least be a reason behind it, a good enough one to justify it. Because if there was no good enough reason, then why should a survivor have to suffer that bad? That's why it shouldn't be dismissed, because the past is important to learn from and to adapt, but also to find and maybe come to that conclusion that they deserved better all along, and that hopefully they can find someone better, or if they already know of someone or previously encountered someone, there can still be a form of hope. So hopefully this video does bring that true closure and fills those voids, because survivors don't always get the chance to receive that perspective. They may look for it themselves, but they may not find all the answers. And in doing so, doing it themselves can lead to wearing oneself out, night terrors and more struggles there. And they've already dealt with enough already. They don't deserve more. So hopefully this video can help along the way and with time. So if you want to share the video, or if you know of someone that may need this or want to listen, feel free to share it. And you want to hit the thumbs up, that'll be appreciated. I do have an alternative video coming shortly in a few days' time, but I'll do a post on that to see if people want to see it. We'll leave it there for now. Appreciate those that did watch all the way through or partially, or those in the background, much appreciated. Take care for now, and I'll see you next time.